let's talk about the best trades from last week, review the prior week structure, and go over the plan for how to trade ES for the week of July 27th. Coming into this week, remember, we had spent the prior 2 weeks forming a basing range in balance here between 62.55 and 63.35. We attempted to break this out and sustain above and could not do that to end the week last week. So opening up the week, we were going to open right at 63.35, and this would be the key pivot for this week. Whether or not buyers could sustain above this for continuation to new all-time highs, or whether sellers could keep this offered and hold below 63.35 to try for reversion back down the range. Overall, we saw sellers' inability to keep 63.35 offered, unable to hold below this area. Both Sunday night reclaimed this for a push to new all-time highs into 63.73, and then again a second opportunity where we retraced that move, ended up failing back under 63.35. Buyers swept the Monday low for a failed breakdown, and sellers still unable to hold below 63.35. So the failed breakdown of the Monday low and then reclaiming 63.35 again really was what put ES back into trend mode into the rest of the week to end up closing through 6400 into 64.25. So sellers continue to be unable to hold underneath this pivot, and being able to sustain above the range highs and get that range high breakout. We saw nearly 100 points from that point into the rest of the week. And after this point, much fewer opportunities for new entries. Really best to just trail long runners. Shorts at resistance, once we're above a range high in trend mode, become much more difficult. There were a few short opportunities at 63.73, key resistance here, 2 rejections, but again, higher time frame, both of those ended up getting bought. And then the rejection here, back test at 63.52, buyer stepped in, hold here, and then continue and kind of gain momentum. One, holding the back test of 63.52, and then clearing 63.73 is what gave us this kind of vertical rally into 6400. And then we based around 6400 before eventually taking that next leg up into 64.25 right into the close on Friday. As far as key setups for last week, the reclaims of 63.35 worked well, especially the sweep of the Monday low. Best trade of the week, really, the failed breakdown of the Monday low, which ended up kickstarting this trend mode. There were a few short opportunities. If you're playing that side, rejections at 63.73 resistance worked pretty well. After that, very hard to short resistances. There was one final opportunity where we put in a little sweep of the overnight low on Thursday, which allowed you to get long again for this kind of continuation move into 64.25. Once we got into be able to sustain above 63.35 and started this kind of trend mode on ES, a few opportunities where you could play back tests after breakouts of key resistance. 63.52, both of these, 63.73, both of these happened on headlines. So we got headlines on tariffs or trade deals where we spiked through that resistance at 63.52, and then buyer stepped in on the back test and allowed for continuation overnight. Same thing here, 63.73, a headline that spiked through it, fades back in, buyer step in on the back test, and then allows for momentum higher. So a few opportunities there for kind of back test entries after breaking key resistances at 63.52 and 63.73. Let's talk about the plan for next week and how to trade, how I will be looking to trade this as we continue to see extreme strength in trend mode from the long side in ES. For next week, buyers remain in full control, and though we are likely close to a reversion, you really don't want to try to front run that or guess the top. For a pullback, really you need to see sellers be able to at least offer a prior day low and hold below to even start thinking about the downside. If you want to try to find a top, potentially looking for shorts on these fib extensions into 64.50 and 64.77, but again, those are typically difficult, and really you want sellers to show you some strength by being able to hold below a prior day low and see some of that rotation down, and then that's your signal to be a little bit more cautious on longs and potentially start to engage in the short side a little bit more. So for next week, that means 6400, the 6391 to 6400 area, the Thursday and Friday lows. Really, sellers are going to need to hold below those areas in order to see some reversion back into key back tests at 63.73 and 63.52. If we do see the failure of the 63.91 to 6400 area and we do fade into 63.73, areas to look for longs on any of these areas are totally valid, and really 63.73, 63.52, and 63.35 are all areas to watch for bounces, and any of those could potentially put in a higher low and just resume the trend to new all-time highs. On the long side, buyers want to, for the most direct continuation, just continue to defend 64 6400 and the Thursday low, and base 6400 to 6425, and then try to clear 6425 for continuation higher into those fib extensions 6450 and 6477. And even if 6400 does fail, like I said, from the long side, we could easily see higher lows at any of these pivots, and any of those are potential areas for new long entries, especially a back test of 63.35. Probably my top watch for next week for a long would be a failed breakdown of this Wednesday low at 63.53. So combination of a back test of 63.52, any kind of trap underneath this look below and fail of the Wednesday low, and 63.52 would be an A setup for a long. So if this traps below and reclaims, A plus setup to get long for continuation of the trend and a reversal back up towards 63.73 and 6400, and eventually new all-time highs. On higher time frames, the larger pullback really doesn't even start until sellers are able to offer the prior range high at 63.35. So holding below 63.35 again would favor that traversal back down the range towards the range lows at 62.55. That's this week's review of ES and the weekly plan for next week. If you'd like to trade live with us every day, come check us out at Trade with Insight.